Hey guys, we're going to be talking about some questionable heroes today. So today's question to answer down in the comments is, who is your favorite anti-hero from horror film or horror fiction? I mean like the broadest possible definition of anti-hero. Just someone who is placed in the center of a film or a book, who's kind of supposed to be our protagonist or our hero, but does not possess heroic qualities. Interested to hear what you guys think. I'm Adam Caesar, this is Project Black T-shirt, and today we're going to be talking about the brand new film Tragedy Girls, directed by Tyler MacIntyre. This is coming out later this month as I'm filming this. I think it's going to be VOD, limited theatrical, some kind of combination of those, but if it's playing in a theater near you, I highly, highly, highly recommend you take the drive and go see it. If it's not playing in a theater near you, at least definitely give it a rent, because it is one of the better films of this year, I think. And be sure to keep watching at the end of the review once I kind of wrap up talking about the movie, because as always we do book recommendations here, and today we're going to give 2 book recommendations to go along with Tragedy Girls. Tragedy Girls takes on the slasher subgenre, but instead of doing a Scream-like reinvention or a postmodern reconstruction, tries to basically tell a new story using those tropes without being too winky or self-reflexive, and there is a little bit of that, but we'll talk about it later. It centers on 2 tragedy girls, 2 best friends in high school. They're high school seniors who have hatched this plan to basically become social media superstars by leveraging the mass murder, serial killings that have been happening in their hometown. And things escalate and get darker and darker and darker from there. But it is a comedy. This is a dark comedy in the truest sense of the word, because it never really truly loses its meanness and its downbeat themes and its real heart of misanthropy inside this movie, but it also never stops being funny, and that's kind of the balancing act, and that's why I think Tragedy Girls is so successful. The girls even start out the movie kind of kidnapping their own Jason Voorhees, their own slasher that they're going to use to basically take the fall for their crimes later on, and use to make themselves stars. It's really smart. If that synopsis makes it sound a little too, ripped from the headlines, a little too like commenting on social media and fame and all these different things, those themes are definitely in there, but don't think that this is some kind of quick cash in to be like, oh, kids on the internet today. It's a very successful teen movie. It feels like something that both grown people and teenagers can enjoy and find a little bit of themselves in it. Tragedy Girls, it does have a good bit of invention and does have a good amount of original ideas in it, but in some ways it does remind me of a kind of a little bit of a boom that we had 10 or so years ago, when we had things like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, when we had these kind of smaller budgeted, either direct to DVD or limited theatrical release pictures that kind of went on to become cult classics among like the Fright Rags fandom crew. And I like those movies, but the biggest gripe I have with those movies is that in the last act, in the final third, they always try to redeem their irredeemable characters. They always kind of cheat their conceit a little bit, because we like these killer characters, these comedic killer characters so much that we kind of want to become heroes. And without spoilers, without spoiling the ending or without spoiling what happens in the last third of Tragedy Girls doesn't do that. Tragedy Girls has a conceit, has an idea of these girls being fledgling slasher serial killers, and it follows it all the way through without ever robbing us of without ever trying to feel like it's sanitizing it or giving us a Hollywood happy ending. It's one of the truly best parts of this movie is that it doesn't feel ashamed of itself. It doesn't feel like it needs to hit that kind of save the cat structure, or if it is that save the cat structure, it's like kind of the evil Bizarro World version of Save the Cat. It's pretty great. Another thing movies like this tend to do, and especially less successful movies like this, which I'm not going to shout out names for because I didn't like them, but a lot of horror comedies or a lot of dark comedies, their conceit, their central hook is the joke, and they never really go beyond that, or it's just repetition of that same kind of joke over and over again. One of the things Tragedy Girls does really well is it works as a comedy on its own. It has actual jokes and actual laugh out loud sight gags and pratfalls and quips, and it's just a well written, well put together comedy that happens to have grisly, brutal killings, which for a good part of them are practical effects and are there's like some head crushings, there's some power tools, it's not laden with CGI, and it's not laden with CGI blood. There's a little bit of that, but it doesn't ever feel cheap, and it doesn't ever feel kind of straight to video, and it doesn't ever feel like it's copping out as a horror movie. The two parts of it, the comedy and the horror, and that teen movie and the slasher movie, like everything feels well represented. The best example, and the example that I'm sure a lot of people as they review this movie are going to use, is Heathers. It's definitely the mean-spirited, technologically advanced version of Heathers, and that leads me to another really, really strong part of the movie, which is the cast. Craig Robinson, Josh Hutcherson, there's some big name supporting players in this, and they really do support the two stars of this picture. Alexandra Shipp and Brianna Hildebrand. These two young actors are incredible in this movie. Casting, kind of fresh-paced, teenage-looking actors is always tough in a movie, and your movie can live and die on your young cast. But these two young women are hilarious and funny, and they have to be really morally repugnant characters. They have to be really just terrible people that you can't associate with on any kind of human level for the things that they're doing, but their performances and their kind of knowing when to play something as a joke and knowing when to play something straight is a real kind of tight wire act, and they both are hysterical. I mean, this movie wouldn't be half as good as it is without them. As far as modern horror fandom goes, especially with independent, smaller budgeted pictures, there are a few things that to me are usually nails on a chalkboard. Naming characters after horror directors. Here we have a Cunningham and a Hooper, and I'm sure there were others that I missed. Kind of shout outs to horror movies within horror movies. Here we get a couple bits. We get Martyrs gets name dropped, Dario Argento, and the worst one, as far as I'm concerned, which is throwing on the famously public domain Night of the Living Dead in the background to kind of have it as set dressing. This movie does all three of those things, and I didn't find them annoying in the slightest because the rest of the movie is so well crafted. It kind of just goes to show that when those are in lesser movies, when those are in the kind of things that you're like flipping past on Netflix at 2 a.m. and only watching 20 minutes of, and they kind of drag you out of a movie, if they're put in a good movie, they don't matter. That's kind of what Tragedy Girls does here. It pulls off the miraculous. Another big pet peeve I have, and I'm not sure if you guys are the same, but anytime a movie tries to incorporate technology or tries to incorporate social media in a way that it's gonna try to satirize it or talk about how bad it is for society, I always kind of tune out a little bit, because it's always like some 50-year-old male screenwriter writing 16-year-old female dialogue, and they're talking about like the net or like uploading things, and it always seems so forced and so bad because it's written in such a way that I don't believe that these kids are actually doing that. Tragedy Girls is fine in that regard. It's mostly about these girls' Twitter page and their YouTube page and their follower count, but it still it finds a way to talk about those things in, if not a realistic way, a way that has internal logic and scales and makes sense and gets laughs, which is the important part of a comedy. It is worth mentioning that I saw this in a theater as part of a film festival, the Philadelphia Unnamed Film Festival. The organizers there did a great job. They made the after party kind of prom themed, and there were people there dressed in prom. It really did give that Heathers, John Hughes kind of vibe of even outside of the movie theater itself, which is why you're not going to be able to replicate that, but you should really go to a theater to check this out. So to sum up, Tragedy Girls, a movie that somewhat has a heart of gold because you find yourself feeling for these characters against all odds, even though they are like total irredeemable psychopaths and they're terrible. They should be terrible. It is a movie that kind of seduces you, and that's one of the parts you're left with. You're like, wow, these people did terrible things, and it should make me feel really terrible. But that's kind of the magic trick of the movie. It's like almost like a man bites dog level following of a repugnant character in such a charismatic way. For today's book recommendation, I've got 2 books for you. Just this week, my friend Matt Serafini relaunched his book Feral with my label, Black T-Shirt Books. I'm going to put up the beautiful new cover for it right now. How good was that? It is a werewolf novel. It is gory and in your face, and if you like things like The Howling, or if you like kind of classic monster reinventions like 30 Days of Night, you are going to love Matt Serafini's Feral. Ebook and paperback. I'll put the links down in the description below. Please, please, please support him and go check this book out. You're going to love it. And because Feral is written by a slasher fan, but is not necessarily a slasher novel, I've got to recommend, and I think I might have talked about this on the show before, The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones. When I'm talking slashers, when I'm thinking slashers, I think Stephen Graham Jones. The man knows more about the genre, both in film and in writing, than I will ever know. He is one of the genre's best living writers. I've talked about him on the show before. I've talked about his book Mongrels in its own episode. I've talked about a lot of his short fiction, things like that. But if you haven't read The Last Final Girl, which is kind of the literary Scream taken one step further, that, you know, Tragedy Girls doesn't necessarily present a straight slasher narrative, but neither does Last Final Girl. It is super, super good, super, super funny, super, super intelligent. It's a book you're going to kind of just run through. You're going to love it. I'm Adam Caesar. This has been Project Black T-Shirt. If you like this video, please hit like. If you really like this video, please hit the subscribe button down there. If you want to find out more about me or my books or Black T-Shirt Books, my brand, for lack of a better term, you can sign up for my mailing list. The link is down below. I send you a free ebook with a couple short stories and a novel sample. Have a great day and go see Tragedy Girls. Find it, track it down, watch it, in a theater preferably.